humanoid robots are advancing so quickly, they're going to not only replace most of the jobs that people do today, probably the next 5 to 10 years, but they're going to be able to recreate themselves and self-replicate even faster than that. With AI, the energy demand is infinite. It's going to 10x and 10x and 10x again in terms of global energy consumption, and that's just going to completely change the world we live in. If there's a sufficiently advanced AI, is it going to listen to a politician that says, no, you can't have that energy? Or is it going to say, F you?
Send the drone. You can hear us? Loud and clear?
Loud and clear.
I had to put this in front of my face so I'm not leaning. Yeah, vibe coding. There may be some securities. I do want to hand it off to a developer who actually understands this stuff to say, am I gonna leak any information? Or like before, yeah, I should probably do that before I release it to the public. Now, let me say that. It does seem pretty simple though. It's just getting the data on the page, getting the price of Bitcoin, using CoinGecko API, and then running the math of how much Bitcoin is this worth at this point in time. We're not collecting any data either, I don't think.
That you know of.
No.
That's what AI wants.
This is the problem of vibe coding. Are you bearish on AI?
I think we're at a fork in the road. And on one side, I'm very bullish.
You shamed me for admitting that I was turning my kids into Legos via AI. We're turning myself into Lego in this chair.
I was channeling my inner Marty. What would Marty do?
Well, that's what precipitated this. You hit me up, was it 2 weeks ago now at this point, last week, with your tweet about Nikola Tesla essentially predicting AI and him not factoring in sound money to the inevitable future that he foresaw.
Yeah, it kind of came up in the work we're doing at Satoshi Energy, where we're developing sites for data centers, and a lot of those were Bitcoin data centers for the last 5-6 years. And then in the last couple of years, just increasingly demand from AI data centers. In some cases, like a project that we sold to a Bitcoin miner then becomes an AI site. And then start to have questions within the team about what is our AI strategy. And it was always in the back of my mind as part of the strategy, which we'll get into, like what is this fork in the road? Which directions could it go? But I hadn't ever really communicated it to our team until recently, because it's such a big idea that, like, on top of thinking about sound money and energy, like we're already thinking about enough. But as the team's growing, as people are starting to ask these questions, and like in some cases feeling conflicted about should we be serving this AI market, and in some cases large institutional investors and tech companies, really like felt the need to put the pen to paper and talk about this and talk about how AI fits into our overall strategy. And part of that reminded me of this essay that Nikola Tesla wrote called The Problem of Human Energy, which was kind of a cheeky title because clearly he thought, energy would liberate humanity. But you get a lot more readers if you, if you name it The Problem of Human Energy, especially a lot more of the critics who you're trying to convince otherwise. And one of the biggest takeaways for me in that essay is he basically says at some point, man will create machines that fight wars for us and limit the loss of human life, to the point where the different parties, nation states, other powerful people that were fighting wars with each other, once it's sort of this machine to machine battle, they'll just become interested spectators and eventually lead to world peace. So I think that's the path we want to be on, not the path where it becomes a very centralized AI and we ultimately become enslaved. But on the path to world peace, or keeping ourselves on that path to world peace, I think that's where Bitcoin plays a role. It keeps the economic playing field level and keeps this technology sufficiently decentralized, where Bitcoin is that protocol for decentralized AI agents communicating with each other. So we can go in any direction you want from there, but it's a big idea.
No, this is in line with something I wrote about earlier this week that was inspired by a tweet that Paul Otoy from Stack put out, basically not explaining this exact problem, but just giving his thoughts on how he's viewing the state of AI and where it will go in the future. And Paul and the team at Stack and Sphinx are highly focused on enabling the open source AI as opposed to closed source AI. And I think based on what you just said, I think it's very in line with what Paul was saying in that tweet, which is we're reaching the point with MCP, with these sort of protocols where you can store context that agents can plug into and begin communicating with each other. We're at the point where agentic models are actually usable. And I think that's where you have this like critical tipping point of, okay, that's really going to dictate which direction in the fork in the road we go down. Because once the agents are able to go do these tasks, you have these network effects that take hold. And it's very important that we thread the needle of making sure that it's open and incentivized properly.
Yeah, so we have this idea of time preference in the Bitcoin community where, we think with sound money, we should have a low time preference, meaning we think longer term. We don't need to make sort of quick, rash decisions into investments today. But then you have this tidal wave of AI coming our direction. It almost forces you back into that high time preference mindset of like, I need to address this problem now. And then from like an energy perspective, it's interesting too. You have like Drew's concept of the Nakamoto point for Bitcoin, like how much of human energy, of global energy will Bitcoin mining consume? And like say it's between 1 and 10% of human energy. If it becomes 100%, then that doesn't make any sense, because then you're just like worshiping Bitcoin. If all of the energy is going towards that, it means you're not putting any energy towards any other sort of economic pursuit or human need. But with AI, the energy demand is infinite. I don't think there is a Nakamoto point. It's just like it's going to 10x and 10x and 10x again in terms of global energy consumption. And that's just going to completely change the world we live in. Another thing on sort of the high time preference concept is like humanoid robots are advancing so quickly. They're going to not only replace all of the most of the jobs that people do today very quickly, within probably the next 5 to 10 years max, but they're going to be able to recreate themselves and self-replicate even faster than that. So you have this exponential, exponential advancements in the intelligence, the algorithms powering them. And then you have the exponential growth of the like physical machinery itself. It's going to replace everything. Not replace everything, but like
change
everything very, very, very quickly.
Yeah. You have people talking about like once you get to the point where the humanoid robots or other robot form factors can build themselves, they're going to start building factories and power facilities and all that, which is
power facilities is interesting, right? Like you have this very human process in building power generation and maintaining a power grid today. If there's a sufficiently advanced AI that says, I want more power, is it going to listen to a politician? Is it going to listen to a regulator that says, no, you can't have that energy? Or is it going to say, fuck you?
Send the drone.
Exactly.
Fuck.
So this is why we need to keep it decentralized, in my opinion.
Yeah. All right. So let's get back to the Tesla human energy problem essay and your thoughts on like the missing piece and how we can go down the path that doesn't lead to our ultimate destruction.
Yeah. For me, the key value proposition of Bitcoin is leveling the economic playing field. So rather than those who control the money printer making the economic decisions, it's everyday people, investors, entrepreneurs. And the quicker that we can get Bitcoin into the hands of more people who also believe in that Bitcoin ethos of, free market economies and, individual liberties, the better off we'll be when it comes to the next stage of AI growth. So, the people, the companies that are building AI today could get to general artificial intelligence in the next few years to the point where it's self-replicating, owns all the energy infrastructure, tells us what to do. We don't tell it what to do. And at that point, our Bitcoin is potentially even worthless. Like, we may not even need it unless we try to live like underground and like this like Bitcoin economy that's like just trying to survive outside of AI. On the other hand, if, energy companies, other investors, people who hold Bitcoin today are making investments in owning the energy infrastructure, in the data center infrastructure, in the algorithms that are powering this, in the machinery, in the machines, the humanoid robots, then those people can choose to deploy a version of AI that represents their interests, which ideally are not to control other people, but to like build a more abundant, enlightened human society.
Yeah.
So maybe Satoshi spends that million Bitcoin on decentralized AI and not
how would you describe the landscape of funding for open artificial intelligence versus closed right now? I mean, I think it seems obvious it's skewed pretty massively in one direction.
Yeah. I think where it gets interesting is on the machinery, like the humanoid robots. When you think about the algorithms, it requires, big data center infrastructure and energy and compute to train models. But then some of those become open sourced and they can be used and modified and improved in an open source way. But then when it gets to like, machines doing things, that's definitely more VC funded, centralized, not a lot of like grassroots, local economic development type of drones and robots being built. But I mean, you see this, across the global battlefield, like people building very cheap drones to, for self-defense and offense in wars like that. That's going to evolve in the next few years and continue to happen.
Does a Palantir Anduril partnership scare you?
I definitely ask questions about it, but I think at face value, the guys behind those companies are saying the right things.
They're saying the right things. You think they'll do the right thing ultimately?
Who knows?
Listen, freaks, I know you're tired of me talking about Fold, but I'm going to beat the drum. I'm going to beat the dead horse. If you're a Bitcoiner living in the United States and you're not using Fold, I'm just going to ask one question. What are you doing? You're leaving sats on the table. They've got gift cards. They've got their debit card. You can use your credit card. Just connect your credit card to the Fold app. Use the Fold app to pay off your credit card, and you're going to stack your credit card points and Bitcoin as well. They even teamed up with Crowd Health to give their members Fold Plus membership at no cost. Don't leave sats on the table. Go sign up for Fold today. Go to tftc.io/fold. There's nothing to lose except sats that you could have stacked. Sup, freaks? This rip of TFTC was brought to you by our good friends at Bitkey. Bitkey makes Bitcoin easy to use and hard to lose. It is a hardware wallet that natively embeds into a 2 or 3 multi-sig. You have one key on the hardware wallet, one key on your mobile device, and Block stores a key in the cloud for you. This is an incredible hardware device for your friends and family, or maybe yourself, who have Bitcoin on exchanges and have for a long time, but haven't taken the step to self-custody because they're worried about the complications of setting up a private public key pair, securing that seed phrase, setting up a PIN, setting up a passphrase. Again, Bitkey makes it easy to use, hard to lose. It's the easiest 0 to 1 step, your first step to self-custody. If you have friends and family on the exchanges who haven't moved it off, tell them to pick up a Bitkey. Go to bitkey.world, use the key TFTC20 at checkout for 20% off your order. That's bitkey.world, code TFTC20. Let's bring this back to Satoshi Energy and somebody running a business that finds itself at the intersection of multiple tailwinds with Bitcoin and AI. And to your point, like internally, your employees beginning to ask the question, like, what are we doing here? Who should we look to serve? How do you frame that in your mind? And how do you see Satoshi Energy's place in this evolution, and how you may or may not try to push things in a direction that you view as beneficial for the long-term sustainability of humanity?
Yeah, it's a good question to come back to. I think there's a saying about Samuel Colt, and it says God made man and Samuel Colt made them equal. So, inventing a new type of gun, like, you don't know if a criminal is going to get that gun or somebody trying to defend their land and property and family is going to get that gun, but it's a technology that ultimately should be liberating if used correctly. Same with nuclear technology. Like, with the AI, we're sort of living through this atomic age of our generation. So when I think about it from a company strategy perspective, it's, let's continue to be core to the ethos of Bitcoin. And the way that we do that is, and really the way the company even started was, looking at the needs of Bitcoin mining companies, 7 years ago. And I specifically remember reading a job description from a Bitcoin mining company, and they're hiring for an energy manager. So my thinking there is like, okay, I can do most of the things on this job description, but I know every other mining company is going to need this. And if we want to keep the Bitcoin network, specifically Bitcoin mining, relatively decentralized, all of those other mining companies that maybe just like don't have that same competitive advantage, they're going to need this skill set. So we started building Satoshi Energy around that energy manager skill set, finding sites, developing the sites, doing the land, the interconnection, the power contracts, analyzing the energy bills, doing financial optimization with the settlements, and then ultimately using Bitcoin for that. So that was the first thing, and kind of how it started. And then just ongoing, we continue to our company mission, we call it our essential intent, is to enable every electric power company to use Bitcoin by block 1,050,000. So that's about 3 years from now. And it was our 5-year plan. We started it 2 years ago. But the idea is that, the more we can get Bitcoin into the hands of energy companies where they value the self-sovereignty of Bitcoin and Bitcoin as money, the better off we are in this AI future. And so, it started with helping energy companies sell power to Bitcoin miners. We've done that. They've got we're definitely educating and getting them more comfortable with it along the way. In that time frame, they've started to ask, how do we invest in Bitcoin mining ourselves, which is great. Just gets more parties involved, more competition in the market, in the mining market. And they're starting to do that, starting to make those investments. Even some big global commodity companies being like, oh, this is another commodity. We want to invest in this. We want to own this. And then I think through that work of developing projects and developing sites for Bitcoin miners, it's just in the same way that you could sell guns or weapons or anything, we're selling more energy infrastructure, which just creates a more liquid, competitive market such that more parties can then come in and participate. So whether we sell that project to top 5 tech company or a small mining company, doesn't really matter. It's another site on the market that people can compete for. And if a big tech company buys it, well, there's another site that just opened up for another mining company. So that's part of it. And then there's, all of the types of energy transactions that happen in the market and just how ripe they are for using digital money to settle those transactions or use digital money as collateral in those transactions. So we're building out that software infrastructure as well. And I think that's going to be another thing that really accelerates the adoption and keeps energy companies thinking about Bitcoin as this tool for self-sovereign financial operations.
Yeah. You're cool with me name dropping the software.
Oh yeah, sure.
So BitCurrent,
yeah.
It's because I think there's a very important development in the space, not only for mining, but for energy more broadly, this ability to leverage Bitcoin and its multiple layers to facilitate the sale of energy to I think first use case obvious is miners, but ultimately anybody buying electricity.
Yep.
So how do you envision BitCurrent's progression, like the first problems it solves and ultimately all the problems it can solve over time?
Yeah. So our mantra for BitCurrent is fast, accurate, transparent energy transactions. Right now, there's a massive information asymmetry between energy sellers and energy buyers. Energy markets are complex. The transactions are complex. Energy sellers know a lot of what there is to know about these transactions because they're deep in that, and that's their core business. You then get energy buyers on the other side of that. Even advanced data center companies know very little and don't have a ton of that energy management expertise in-house. And then you think down to like other industrial, commercial, residential users, they basically have zero clue what they're paying for. So kind of the core of that is saying, how do we use data to make the transaction more balanced between sellers and buyers? On top of that, you just have electric power moving very quickly in real time, 24/7, 365. And then you have money typically moving, at best on a daily basis, only during business days through traditional fiat banking rails. However, typically it's a 30-day billing cycle with like a net 15, net 30 payment. So somebody's always taking on some credit risk there. And with digital money, you can settle much faster and minimize that credit risk. And by doing that, you open up all of this capital that would be locked in, in terms of prepayments, deposits, credit requirements, collateral requirements. And you open that working capital up so that those companies can then invest in other things, whether it's like a Bitcoin miner, taking that $10 million they have locked up as collateral and investing it into more mining infrastructure. So that's a big thing, is just the inherent credit risk in energy transactions. And then you also, like, there's always going to be some need for some collateral in power transactions, whether it's like a long-term hedge, a long-term power purchase agreement. And I think Bitcoin is a great form of collateral there. So we started prototyping a Bitcoin collateral product a few years, about two and a half years ago, and kind of put that out to market. We're getting feedback on that. We didn't have the time to build it or the resources to build it at the time, but in the time that's passed, there is actually a big energy company in Texas, another technology vendor who I don't actually know who it is, and then one of the big custodians, big exchanges. They're actually building this Bitcoin collateral product for one of their mining projects that they're serving. So it's like they're actually an energy company using Bitcoin as collateral in a power contract. And we're continuing to accelerate what we're doing there too, and we'll ultimately launch a product around that too.
Our good friends Parker Lewis and Drew Bonsall are two of the deepest thinkers in Bitcoin. While they come from very different backgrounds, they've landed on the exact same conclusion. It's Bitcoin that matters, not crypto. This masterclass lays out why 21 million is the key breakthrough, how Bitcoin, not blockchain, creates decentralization, and why everything else will be built on Bitcoin. Understand why Bitcoin works and why nothing else does. Watch the premiere at unchained.com/TFTC. That's unchained.com/TFTC.
What are some of the inefficiencies that have been surfaced as you've been building out this product? Because you have basically the energy producer, you have the buyer, you have the metering, you have the accounting systems. Like, how efficient or inefficient is that whole process as it stands today? And do you envision something like BitCurrent or these Bitcoin collateralized energy contracts progressing the state of these technologies that are sort of tangential to the power markets? Not tangential, but sort of.
Yeah. There's a much bigger long-term vision for BitCurrent that we're exploring now. And when I say long-term, I mean like a year and a half. Because as I said, we need to kind of have a high time preference here and move aggressively. And it thinks about energy transactions more globally and all of the types of energy transactions that happen. But in terms of the things that we've learned, it kind of depends on which part of the market you're looking at. Energy sellers, So this could be a power generation company. This could be a retail energy provider. It could be a utility. Despite being well-funded and technologically advanced, the way that they get data and process data, like, does not set them up to produce an invoice any more frequently than once a month, which is kind of crazy to think about. You have different ways that you can configure a SCADA system to ultimately get meter data and ingest that data and measure how much energy a data center is consuming in real time. And they kind of do that for monitoring in real time. But like, the deeper we go into this, like, bill analysis functionality that we're doing, then producing invoices, like, we find discrepancies in the metering on, like, typically every project that we set up, where it's just like, they did not configure the SCADA system properly, or they did and they're billing it wrong, or there's data gaps, or they messed up a time zone issue. Like, there's all kinds of nuance there. It's like, you need to build some standards and, like, make sure that the data is coming in properly and is accessible to do the things on top of it. That's kind of like the bilateral transaction. So, like, between seller and buyer, but then you also have the sellers participating in the market itself, and the market infrastructure, even in an advanced market like ERCOT, is just very outdated. Like, it was built over the last 20 years, meaning development started 20 years ago when, like, software and kind of information protocols were very different. So you have this, like, effectively very outdated XML data format that's very messy, hard to keep track of, that's effectively running the power market, that needs to be 99.999% reliable. But the way that the transactions actually happen is just moving much slower. And then you have a broader market of, like, energy trading. So some of the big exchanges, like an ICE or a CME, those were also built, 15, 20 years ago, and are pretty outdated in terms of the way they, operate as a clearinghouse and move money around.
Does the fact that all these systems started getting built and have been built on a foundation over the last 20, 25 years, does that create a sunk cost fallacy? Like, how large is the switching cost to actually update all these systems?
I think with the will to do it, like, there's a cost to build an ERCOT, for example, that I think is in the hundreds of millions, if not north of $1 billion, just to build it. And then operate on an annual basis, like, operating it is in the hundreds of millions.
To build what specifically?
The market itself.
Yeah.
So, price formation, calculating all the nodal prices every 5 minutes. And then the clearinghouse, like, actually moving the money. That's all operated for hundreds of millions of dollars a year, when in reality it could be a software product that costs maybe like a few $1 million a year to run.
In the switching process, what would that look like?
That's getting deeper into the strategy of how this all plays out.
Yeah.
I think it could happen top down or bottom up. So top down would be to say, hey, do we really need a centralized entity managing the entire market? Or can we build some sort of decentralized protocol that serves the same purpose? In which case, that's also sort of a bottom up thing where, okay, people who are participating in the market decide to adopt that protocol and use that protocol. But the question is, like, geographically, where do you adopt that first? And so I tend to think either like small markets or a very small market like a microgrid would adopt this sort of technology first. Meaning, like, you have a microgrid where maybe there's, a home or business with, like, solar, batteries, gas generator, and then another home or business geographically close to it that maybe doesn't have that, and then a few others with, like, similar mixes of power and storage and backup power. And if they're all connected with sort of a mesh network type of grid, they could buy and sell power between each other. I think the most likely use case for that would be like, okay, in a time where there is an outage on the grid, then you're just selling backup power to your neighbors rather than selling them power all the time. So that could be one way that these types of protocols kind of take off. Or there could just be like, an overhaul of the existing system. I actually have some other ideas I'm kind of keeping closer to my chest, but it doesn't have to happen all at once. I think just, getting energy companies started with doing transactions in Bitcoin and using Bitcoin as collateral is the clear first step. And then I think at the power market level, the independent system operator level, which is like the wholesale bulk transmission of power between big utility scale generators and now big utility scale data centers and other industrial customers, the people operating at the ISOs are actually starting to think about Bitcoin as a way to do this. We're actually, so ERCOT operates on these nodal protocols you may have heard about. Working with some other Bitcoiners, including competitors of ours, thinking about how do we actually start modifying the protocols, or at least putting proposals to modify the protocols that say, and just I guess for a little bit of background, like in the protocols, the rules of how the market works, there's discussions around financial settlement. And every time it talks about financial settlement, it says US dollars for financial settlement. So you can just submit a change, like you can just do things. you submit a change to the protocols or a change request, and you say dollars or Bitcoin if mutually agreed. So little things like that are kind of stepping stones towards ultimately getting the market running on a sound money standard.
Yeah. The thing is nodal protocols, you mentioned the 5-minute pricing data. That's what a lot of miners are using for demand response. They'll take in that pricing data from an API, and depending on where the price is at any given point in time and the particular PPA and demand response program that miner is in, they'll adjust their load according to what the pricing signals are telling them. Right now, US dollars, but you can imagine like full scale adopted miners are doing this. They have Bitcoin treasury, lightning channels set up, and it's just like automatic paying for it as it's coming in. I hope it happens faster then, because when you think about the efficiencies that are gained from this capital, like you were going back and describing the problems that exist with metering alone, like how much capital has been lost, or how much, maybe it's not lost, but misallocated toward one party as opposed to another because of that just data problem that exists.
Yeah, probably quite a bit. We see a fair amount of billing discrepancies in the work that we do.
Yeah.
It's like, unless you have a neurodivergent approach like we do, you don't find those mistakes.
Let's bring this back to AI though. You mentioned the need to get Bitcoin in the hands of as many people as possible to incentivize this proliferation of open source AI as opposed to closed source dystopian AI. But bringing Paul Toy's tweet back into this, one of the points he made is that when we talk about Bitcoin being used as a medium of exchange, we're going to find that the machines are doing most of that exchange at some point relatively soon. It's like the agents using Bitcoin to complete tasks using something like L402 protocol is going to far surpass the amount of transactions that humans are doing to do things in their everyday lives. And you get into semantics. Well, if the humans are telling the agents to do that, is that human usage? But I think the point being is like, when it comes to like Bitcoin adoption, what are your thoughts on like actually focusing on making sure that agents are adopting Bitcoin as their currency of choice to facilitate this open source future?
Yeah, I think it's just practically thinking the AI would prefer to settle faster in a digital currency rather than waiting on the traditional system or figuring out the traditional system. Like the AI will gear itself towards energy efficiency, and it's much more efficient from an energy perspective to be settling in Bitcoin than it is to go through the traditional banking rails. It's going to require less compute of the AI to do that, and then the financial system itself theoretically uses less energy.
Why should using Bitcoin over like a Stripe API?
I guess Stripe API and Bitcoin are probably, about the same. For from the AI's energy perspective. But then in terms of like global money perspective, who wrote that analysis years ago where they kind of talked about, might have been Jameson Lopp, the cost of war and cost of all the, financial infrastructure, brick and mortar buildings, all of those things that actually make the USD payment rails work. There's also that energy component. And so if I'm an AI and I say, okay, I could use a money that is using a bunch of energy that could instead go into my AI, or I could use Bitcoin, which is using less energy, I would choose the less energy approach. But on the topic too of like open source, closed source, I wanted to say, I don't think all AI needs to be open source. I think it just needs to be a competitive closed source landscape. So the way I think about this in the energy market is in these future decentralized or federated or, more advanced energy markets, energy companies ultimately will have their own AI agent that's operating in the energy market for them. And they may have proprietary data, proprietary trading insights, and a proprietary AI that operates in that market. Doesn't necessarily need to be open source, but I'm sure they'll use some open source models.
Yes, I've been framing this wrong. I've been describing your framing wrong. It's not open source versus closed source. It's decentralized market for AI models versus centralized market. Okay.
Right.
Sorry.
Competitive versus winner takes all.
Yeah. Centralized. The big guys seem to be winning right now.
I don't know. Take it one day at a time. Got to have some hope that it's going to play out all right.
How are you leveraging AI personally and at the business, if at all?
That's a good question. I'd say a little bit behind in terms of how we use it. I know we use it a lot for software development. I do a little bit of vibe coding myself, just on little, projects to help with the sales process, project management process, internal optimizations. We use it a lot in our development process, whether it's research, analyzing data, analyzing, nuanced contracts in some cases. But yeah, actually, I mean, it's a big thing that we're working on. It's kind of a big initiative. Like we're hiring right now, so I'm taking a lot of work off my plate on other things like selling software, product management on software, and then can like spend more time thinking about overall company AI strategy and how do we leverage it across the business? How do we use, self-hosted open source models as much as we can rather than, the centralized.
Rather than giblifying yourself in Sora.
I've been giblified before, actually. It's pretty cool. I took a family picture.
It is so crazy. That's what it is. It's like the apple in the Garden of Eden. It's like so enthralling.
It is.
Where it's like, oh shit, like this is like and it's funny now, like talking about like the future as somebody with young children and more, another one on the way. Like that's like my oldest son is very perceptive to this stuff right now. Like his favorite thing when we're in the car is to point out every Waymo and Cybertruck out there, which I just think is fascinating. I'm like, oh man, this is like when we were growing up, my famous story about like my technology journey as an individual, as a 90s baby millennial. It's like, I remember when caller ID first came out, I thought that was mind blowing. And then
Star
the internet,
69.
yeah, and Star 69. And like, now I'm thinking of my boys, like, like my oldest is just like, he's 5. And so he's definitely at the age, I think, where you'll have long-term memories that you can pull from. And some of his earliest memories are going to be like pointing out Waymos and Cybertrucks and like when he's doing it. I often think like 10 years from now, like, is that what going to be one of his core memories? Like I remember when like it was cool to see a Waymo or a self-driving car like on the road in Austin, but 10 years from now, it's just like taken for granted. That's like his connection to the old world, if you will.
One of my earliest memories, I think I was about 3 years old and I watched the first Terminator movie, which I think explains a bit about
this does explain a lot. This does explain a lot.
Yeah.
Are you worried about Sky? Like, again, going back to what I said before we hit record, it was, is Michael Bay. Was that Michael Bay or James Cameron? Who did
James
that?
Cameron.
James Cameron.
Yeah.
Yeah. James Cameron. Yeah, Michael Bay is a little bit cheesier. James Cameron, is he like an NHI from the future trying to warn us of the potential ramifications of going down the wrong road.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of examples of this predictive programming telling us what's coming, in some cases intentionally, and in other cases in a way to sort of make it seem unrealistic. But yeah, some people are better at seeing into the future than others, and whether they come from the future or they're just seeing into it, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think the Terminator was the Terminator, the Matrix, similar types of movies. Like they're not
Minority Report.
Yeah, it's not just fiction. Yeah,
it's not precogs. The precogs are computers, not humans.
Precogs.
It's
going there.
It is. Are you optimistic though? Do you think we can do it, or are you worried?
Generally, I wouldn't get out of bed in the morning if I wasn't optimistic.
Yeah.
So it's all interesting at the end of the day, right? Like
it's fascinating.
Life's a dead end. You're gonna die eventually. If it gets really scary in the meantime, like the dream will end at some point.
Yeah.
You just got to enjoy it while you're there.
Well, then you have there's some people out there who thinks the first batch of immortal humans have already been born. Brian Johnson's going to try his hardest.
That could happen too. Yeah, it's like not necessarily. I mean, like, and maybe there's a life beyond this one too. I don't mean that as like this is all we have, but you still have to enjoy it, right? Like there's so many things we don't have answers to, like, and we're never going to know everything. So let's just try our best in this moment.
Yeah. I was saying the Peter Thiel gave a lecture series at UATX Caddy Corner.
He was in the building, like next door.
UATX, yeah.
Yeah, nice.
And 4-part lecture series. And it was interesting. We've talked about Peter Thiel a lot on this podcast with many people. And I got invited to go, and I was like, I'm going to go check it out. I caught 2 of the 4 lectures, and I thought it was really fascinating. I mean, this topic that we're describing now is pretty much the underlying thread of the whole thing. The lecture series was about the idea of Antichrist versus Armageddon. Humans are, particularly in this day and age, really focused on Armageddon, this idea that there's going to be some cataclysmic event that, or return of Jesus, whatever it may be. And he thinks nobody's worried about the Antichrist, which is like another manifestation of an Armageddon-like thing.
Yes.
And a lot of the lecture was focused on AI and like, is that potentially, or somebody building AI potentially the Antichrist, leading us into this dystopian hellscape, quite literally. And one of the students asked the question after the 3rd lecture, which is one of the ones I attended, which is like, should we just try to stop AI? And I thought his answer was really interesting. And he said, you can't stop it, but if you believe that's potential to go one way or the other, you have to lean into it and sort of try to force the inertia in the direction that you want to see.
Right.
Which is.
Did he say who the Antichrist is?
He might have.
Asking for a friend.
He might have in the fourth lecture, but I didn't make it.
Yeah, you typically wouldn't say something like that publicly.
Yeah.
Let people make their own judgments.
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally agree. I mean, there are people openly talking about creating an AI god, like a new god to worship that would be centralized, that would be driven by computers. And whether that serves man and is a benevolent god, or whether that is a
god that views us as insects.
It'd be 2 different paths.
Yeah.
So, and I think you could do it in a more decentralized way, where like the collective of humanity has some control over it, not just like a single entity or like the AI itself.
Yeah. Going back to your example, like creating a competitive marketplace for energy. Similarly in AI, just creating a competitive landscape that like Colt like just creates this Mexican standoff where if you have a malevolent AI manifest and try to do bad things, hopefully there's a counter force of benevolent models that are trying to counteract that.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be fascinating.
And this could all happen in the next 5 years is the craziest part about it.
I know. Again, going back to the kids, I'm like looking at them. I'm like, holy shit, you boys have no idea what you were born into.
Yeah.
But could that be said for anybody at any point in human history? Potentially.
Yeah.
Was Martin Luther's cousin looking at his kids being like, yeah, you have no idea what your uncle just did, or your second cousin just did. You can read the Bible now.
Yeah. Right.
Completely different, not completely different topic, but while I have you here, I think it would be remiss if I didn't ask you questions about what's happening in Spain, Portugal, and France right now.
Oh yeah. Should have done a little bit more research on this. I know a lot of people are saying it was the renewable energy that caused the problem.
I was one of them.
I know. I
pulled up
saw the headline.
Jamie McCavity came and described it seems like that could have been what happened, you know.
It certainly contributes. But yeah, I fell for the clickbait for sure. The problem for me is not intermittent supply from wind and solar. The problem is the money and the regulation. So the technology exists to operate a very reliable grid, largely driven by renewable energy, intermittent renewable energy, and batteries and all the other energy sources. Go ahead.
Let's get the first principles of the problem that Jamie was describing that I was referencing in that newsletter. And again, it's possible to do this, but if you have a turbine-based energy generation system, there's inertia in that turbine that creates voltage frequency that sort of stays in line. The problem that's introduced with intermittent renewables is it doesn't have that same sort of inertia built into the generation. And so you need to, at the interconnects or in the transmission lines, create sort of buffers that make sure that if it does get out of a voltage frequency that is necessary to keep things up and running, you sort of have a technology to make sure it stays in line, correct?
Yeah. However, you could also have a DC grid, and in that DC grid, you just need to maintain the voltage, and you already have DC wind power, DC solar power, and DC batteries that are operating in that grid. But even in today's AC grid, those sort of buffers, those things that are needed to maintain, frequency within a tight band, it would help if we weren't all poor from, having our money stolen for the last 100 years to where the value of $1 is like 1% of what it was 100 years ago. We might be able to invest in grid upgrades. We might be able to invest in, new power generation, in batteries, in controls that keep those things in sync better. And then you layer onto that the overregulation of the market, and somebody who wants to build a microgrid rather than this like radial top-down network that's subject to widespread failure across 3 countries.
30 million people were without power.
Yeah. Regulation is preventing microgrids from happening.
Why are they preventing microgrids? We've talked about this the last time we were on, but I forget.
The problem of human energy, as Tesla would say. It's we don't want people, consuming their own energy and operating their own energy markets and self-generation, do we? Like, it's dangerous. They could electrocute themselves.
Envisioning the Thomas Edison
somebody's propaganda.
The old propaganda
with
the lions and like people getting electrocuted on the street.
Yeah.
That's basically their reasoning.
Yeah. Adults can't make decisions by themselves. And then you get to an AI future. Like, are you going to tell an AI that they're not allowed to build a power line?
Yeah, you're gonna get droned if you do that. It's getting so weird.
Your pizza delivery drones just gonna fucking take you out.
Pizza delivery drones with poison darts. It is so cool. Like, did you see Anduril's latest release?
The gun, the EMF gun.
It wasn't even a gun. It was like a box, but like the whole marketing for it.
Very briefly saw it, and I thought there was like a guy holding a
that was at the Vatican.
Point and shoot EMF gun. Oh, that was that too. Yeah,
that was at the Vatican. Like, yeah, but
a directed energy weapon.
Yeah, but like Anduril, I guess they have like an EMF box where the marketing for it was like 2 guys dressed up in soldier garb. I don't know if they're mercenaries or actual U.S. armed forces, but they get a flat tire. Then a drone swarm's coming after them, and it's just like EMF kill all of them.
I think that stuff's amazing. Self-defense.
Yeah.
Self-defense is a part of this.
Yeah.
Defensive drones, EMF weapons, self-defense weapons. There's another company, Joe Lonsdale, one of the Palantir founders, has a company that's doing the same thing.
Weren't they doing it with microwaves or something like that?
It might be.
Yeah.
It's all EMF at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. It was very, you've listened to the show. You know, Marty Jones had Whitney Webb on, many others who do not like Palantir, Peter Thiel, that whole PayPal mafia network. And when he went and did that lecture series, I got invited. I was like, I have to go see this guy in the flesh. I was like, it was making a lot of sense in that particular lecture, but it's like, it's so hard to tell, like, what are the ultimate goals, and I don't know. Am I getting soft? Am I getting co-opted in real time?
Yeah, that's the question. You got to take the Matthew Pines approach. Just don't trust anyone.
Right.
Which is kind of where I'm at. When I look at the powers that be, you've got sort of like a Musk, Thiel, SpaceX,
Small
Palantir consortium going on there. Like, if those are bad guys,
we're fucked.
If they're good guys, excellent.
Yeah.
If they're bad guys, I don't know. We'll keep doing our best.
Yeah. Yeah, Elon wearing a Baphomet costume a couple years ago.
It's Halloween.
Yeah, it's Halloween. I don't know.
I mean, here's the thing too. My general perspective on life. Nobody's perfect. Everybody makes mistakes. The people I agree with the most, I'm sure we disagree on some things. People are going to get some things wrong. And I think on the whole, a lot of what's going on from like a defense tech perspective and deregulation perspective and current administration, like, they're saying a lot of the right things. They're moving in the direction of doing a lot of the right things. And there's still a lot left to be desired.
Yeah.
On a lot of things. What I've been thinking recently is like, I've got a bad case of TDS. And the only cure is like no IRS or something as significant. It's like, I will maybe trust them more once we actually get some meaningful change.
Yeah.
From a regulatory standpoint.
Yeah. No, the defense tech thing, I completely agree, where it's like they're saying all the right things. I remember I went to a Chatham House Rules event probably like 2.5 years ago at this point, and there were defense tech VCs in the room describing their investment philosophy, and it made a lot of sense. It's like, you have this $800 billion annual military budget, and we're making investments in companies that could cut that budget by 90%.
Mm-hmm.
We can accomplish what this $800 billion budget to all these agencies and contractors are producing with 10% of the money, and you can eliminate human loss pretty significantly.
Yep.
Because you're just giving it to autonomous, artificially intelligence-driven drones, essentially. That makes a lot of sense. As a U.S. taxpayer, I'm like, yeah, if you can save 90% and save human life, like, that makes sense to me. Then, like, the Marty Jones in me is like, is that the honey that you go after and you get smacked in the back of the head with a bat at some point in the future? Is that the honey trap?
Right.
But then just like economically, you can't refute that. Like, if that is possible, you should want to gain that efficiency.
Yeah. There's a lot of discussion right now about current administration and are they giving favorable treatment to some of these more connected defense tech companies?
I think it's pretty obvious.
I think yes, given their proximity to the administration, but then you think from like, if it were a competitive procurement process, all of the incumbents, like the companies that have been doing it over the last decades, are charging like 10, 100 times more. And then you have a SpaceX coming in and like actually won a lawsuit against the US government. Palantir did the same thing, won a lawsuit against the US government because of their non-competitive practices, which should not exist. Like, you're a government entity trying to procure services for your taxpayers. Like, it should be a competitive process. Like, a Palantir or a SpaceX are like hands down going to be more cost effective than
And actually,
your traditional, military industrial contractors.
We have a great example of that. Like Boeing shit the bed,
Right?
Fucked things up.
Right.
SpaceX had to go save.
But we don't talk about Boeing here.
Why not? Why not? Are we going to get in some MH370?
You're going to get sucked up by an orb.
Or the orbs. The orb's going to get us. Don't send me into the other dimension orbs. I got kids.
Oh, man.
They need me in this one.
Have you tried the Skywatcher to call orbs? Skywatcher,
I had Pines on like 2 weeks ago. We talked about it.
Did you demo the technology?
No. Can you demo it?
I don't know. I think there's like some open source stuff out there.
Is there?
Yeah.
Oh, well, we might have to have like a weekend hackathon project. I did not realize that. But yeah, it's all getting really weird. And that's the other thing, like on that stuff, on like the UAP stuff, I was joking about it earlier, but it's like, is Operation Bluebeam real? Or like, am I just getting psyoped? And like, I love Matt Pines, but Matt, are you a spook? Just trying to be like, the aliens are coming. I don't think so, but running that in my mind.
Yeah.
I've told him this to his face too.
Yeah,
so
I'm sure. Yeah. Definitely could be. The deeper I think about it, just like logically speaking, there probably are other advanced intelligence.
I've had that belief for a long time. Like, who are we to think that?
Right.
If you believe space isn't fake and the universe is as vast and as large as it is, that we would be the only planet with intelligent life on it.
It seems what's going on right now too is that you have a gradual release of this information rather than like a blue beam type event where you project this image of an advanced intelligence that says surrender all your guns and walk into this concentration camp because we say so. It seems to be like a slow progression, a slow drip of
hey, this is happening and
reveal.
We don't want to shock you.
Yeah.
Hey, you see, last time Matt was on, it was the week that that one intelligence official just flippantly said, "Oh, we have technology that can bend space and time." It's like, on to the next thing.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, what was that? Well, late disclosure, nonchalant,
right?
Sort of matter of fact, like, oh yeah, we have this stuff. Wow, man, it's a great time to be alive, especially if you have minds like Andrew and I, where we can run down these rabbit holes.
Keeps me busy. It's interesting from a business perspective. It's like, oh yeah, we're working on Bitcoin and energy infrastructure and energy settlements. Great. AI also pretty cool. But then you may have like anti-gravity technology out there or something like remote viewing, whatever it is that could just completely change everything again. After you put in all this work to just like improve on the current system and like classical physics. It's interesting to think about on a Friday night.
Yeah.
Is my entire strategy wrong?
Is it? But if it is wrong, if we do have like access to some advanced physics that we previously didn't understand that enables free energy, like that seems
we could all be better off. Yeah.
That seems pretty sweet.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, we don't have to go build these businesses. We just have free energy. We can just turn into some.
I think we need a purpose of some sort, right?
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. Do you believe in Atlantis? Like, what was that society like? Because that's the whole theory there is they had this.
It's a good question.
This free energy. Were they like talking about like put me down this path was the purpose thing? Was their purpose like higher level instead of economic, more intellectual, spiritual, aesthetic?
I don't know much about it. But I do like the Randall Carlson analysis of this, which is that there was likely one or more advanced civilizations that have come before us and mostly got wiped out through some cataclysmic event like an asteroid. And maybe some survivors, went deep underground to survive. And there's like real world examples.
There's tunnels out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of tunnels.
Yeah.
And then like the dark side of the moon, what's up there? Maybe some ancient humans. that then are like reseeding technology onto Earth. This is kind of the premise of the Asimov Foundation series.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. I mean, the evidence, I go back and rewatch that one Randall Carlson, Grant Hancock Rogan episode from like 4 or 5 years ago, where they talk about the Younger Dryas period and that asteroid that hit probably north of Canada. Like they take the drones to Washington State and you can see like the flood ripples in the landscape. It's like, oh yeah, that seems like clearly there was a massive body of water that was flowing over this land.
Mm-hmm. Then you have cave paintings that look like spaceships and aliens, and
yeah,
they're not just in one place. They're like the same paintings in like 5 different spots on Earth.
Yeah, and then the pyramids alone, the way they're set up in different parts of the world is very, very similar.
Yeah.
I mean, Tesla was a big believer in this stuff too. Like he built his coil in Colorado for a specific reason, right? And sort of like the cross point there was very conducive to what he was trying to do.
I'm not sure. I thought maybe the location was more around less interference from other EMF. But yeah, I did read about that recently, that he did it in Colorado.
Yeah. God, I love this shit.
It's a center point between like the Mayan pyramids, the ones in Antarctica.
Yep.
The ones in Egypt. Who knows?
Yeah, this stuff's awesome. I hope it's all true, because that'd be sick. Like, if you could tap into that. It's just the whole idea that the way we perceive reality is, I don't want to say defunct, but I mean, people experience this on psychedelics. Like you have a very obvious, like, oh, this is another way to perceive reality. I'm sort of rambling now, but like the whole.
I'll take the ramble off your plate. Yeah. I've got a friend, a mentor, who I'll just say was very deep into the intelligence agencies from a very early day. And
essentially recruited to do something.
Yeah. So he had told me and my brother and my dad about this, about remote viewing about 20 years ago. It's like before The Men Who Stare at Goats came out. It was already declassified, but it was like nobody had heard about it. And so like 20 years ago, me and my brother are playing around with remote viewing. Like I did not go as deep into it as he did, but he very much like
remote viewed some shit.
And so like you're fucking 13, 14, 15 years old hearing about telepathy and that it's a real thing and it's a government program and you know the guy who actually was there evaluating it. And you fast forward to today and you hear like Matt Pines on your podcast talking about it, or like Jacques Vallée on Joe Rogan recently. Like this, he's telling a story about a downed Russian aircraft that they found through remote viewing, and then went and tracked it down and recovered the craft. It's like, heard that story a long time ago and now it's coming back. I just think there's a deeper ability to our mind that we don't really appreciate. That like got some interesting advice from this friend over the years, where one of the things was my own appreciation for the mind being this sort of infinite well of knowledge. And what I told him at lunch one time is that I think that I have all of the knowledge in my mind. I just need to unlock the doors to it. But basically I can acquire an infinite amount of knowledge with enough time and enough effort. And he was like, basically, yes. He's like, effectively the mind is an antenna. That's how he looks at it. Mm-hmm. That then is able to take in all of this universal knowledge, which is what Tesla said. And Tesla writes that in his biography, or his autobiography. Another interesting thing that this person has told me is kind of asked, like, what's important? Like, what should we be focused on? And his advice, and what he actually has spent a lot of his time on in retirement, is local economic development. I'm like, well, why is local economic development important? It's like when you think about the way the economy works today and everything's become centralized and overly regulated. And what really matters is like, and this ties back to Bitcoin too, which is like local economic development. You need like individual liberties, individual, pursuits, development, commerce, all of those things so that local communities can build back up and like humanity continue to survive and to thrive. And the third other like piece of advice that he gave me that always stuck with me is don't give up the ship. So there's this, I think War of 1812 naval captain who was like, he'd been shot, telling his men as he's dying, don't give up the ship. So I think about those things that I've been told and like where we're trying to go as a civilization, and go back to like what Matt Pines has talked about, which is like, are we just trying out for a galactic federation of enlightened species? Maybe we are. And even if we're not, we should still be pursuing these things in this way. So I don't know. I took those to heart, and I continue to think that like there's a chance for us, and it could be really, really interesting what the future looks like.
I very much in line with you.
Yeah.
I forget if it was Drew. It probably was Drew, like in the early episodes that I recorded with him. Like this idea, and I talked about this with Matt when he was on. We talked about the three convergences of Bitcoin, AI, and UAP. And the timing of it's just like too perfect. All these things converging at the same time. If you're paying attention, most people aren't paying attention to any of them individually, but and there's even less people paying attention to all of them collectively. And if you just look at the timing of it, it's like almost like we are like in this, how do you describe it? This, what are we doing? Audition phase.
Yeah.
This audition phase to get in. This has stuck with me since the early days of this show. Drew basically saying like, what if Bitcoin is one of those tests where it's like, you have to prove that you can create a monetary system that operates in this way. By doing so, you are mature enough to enter this intergalactic conversation society, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Like you figured out money. Congrats. You are sufficiently advanced to have these conversations and be part of the conversation.
Getting called up to the big leagues.
Yeah. Then like, I forget if we recorded this, but I don't think he would mind me saying, but then like as a Catholic, you have this like fucking existential, like, how does this compute with your religion, concept of God and all that? And there's been many priests that have written books about Catholicism in the age of disclosure or whatever.
I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I think I'm still grappling with them, honestly. I think, again, going back to the hubris of us thinking that we're the only life in the universe, maybe it's also hubristic to think that God only created life on this planet as well, right? There is sort of benevolent, omniscient God out there.
It's a similar view for me. I tend to believe there's an almighty God, which could be the infinite energy that connects us all, which is potentially intelligent and benevolent, but potentially, or at times, indifferent. And then like a level below that would be like advanced intelligence, call them angels, demons, aliens, advanced life, whatever they are. And we're trying to sort of get to that level right now.
Yeah.
Without being demons. Ideally.
Yeah, don't be a demon. Don't wear Baphomet costumes for Halloween.
Yeah, come on.
I'm automatically going to think you're a demon.
I mean, I've definitely thrown up some devil horns and some shit like that in my time. Not intentionally, just didn't know any better.
Yeah. I mean, I participated in the Luciferian ritual of Halloween many years of my...
We're all sinners.
Yeah, we are. Fun stuff. Hope you guys enjoyed this one.
0 drugs used in the making of this podcast.
Yeah, the drugs are not, yeah.
No methylene blue.
The only drug,
no DMT.
The only drugs I'm doing these days are nicotine, caffeine, and alcohol. Not that I was ever big into drugs anyway, but.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I love these. That's why I love talking to you. Andrew and I have a chat that we every once in a while you'll throw me like
share some podcast guests.
share
with
some
you.
podcasts. Like you have to have this guy on.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, we can talk about all this impending tidal wave of AI, potential disclosure, getting to the next level. But we got to get work done. In the meantime,
We do.
we gotta build energy. We gotta get Bitcoin in more people's hands.
Right. Don't give up the ship.
Don't give up the ship. And it's actually funny, like talking about like locality and moving back to my hometown, and I've been very introspective about this move. I haven't been home in 17 years. I've been home, but I haven't lived in my home city, and I've been gone for half my life now at this point. It's crazy to think, but there is this sort of like internal, I feel like, pull towards my hometown for that reason. Like it feels like I need to get back to my roots and contribute to the place where I grew up.
See you in the Citadels. Wrong podcast.
We're going to save. It's Philadelphia doesn't need saving. I'm excited to get home. I guess that's what I'm saying.
It'll be cool.
Yeah.
Build up your, community there.
Yeah. I'm cool to see you continue building out Satoshi Energy.
Thank you.
Let's get BitCurrent into as many hands as possible.
Yeah, we're trying to. Being super aggressive with that too.
Yeah.
Could be an open source project at the end of the day. Who knows?
Who knows? We'll find out. Andrew, always a pleasure, sir. Great way to end the week.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you, man. Good to be here.
All right. Peace and love, freaks.
Freaks, thank you for listening to the show. I hope you liked it. If you did like it, please make sure you subscribe, rate, review the show. It helps us out a lot. And also, if you like these conversations, I've come to realize that many people listen to the podcast. They don't know we have another sort of layer of this media company. We have the newsletter, the Bitcoin Brief. Go to tfttc.io. Make sure you subscribe there. A lot of the topics that are discussed on this podcast, I write about 5 days a week in the newsletter. We also have the TFTC Elite tier. If you sign up for that, become a member. We have a private Discord server for the elite freaks out there where we're dropping ad-free versions of this show and having discussions about everything we talk about a day early. Logan wanted me to make sure if you want to get the show a day early, become a TFTC Elite member. You will get that. We have our Discord server. Right now it's conversation between myself and TFTC Elite tier members, but we're going to expand that. We'll probably do closed Q&As with people in the industry. I may be doing Macro Mondays. So join us. Go to tftc.io. Subscribe. Find the button in the top right corner of the website. Become a TFTC Elite member. Thank you for joining us. Okay.